In this video, I show you how I painted a reproduction of Da Vinci's Mona Lisa as a commission for a collector. I'll walk you through what I did from start to finish and show a picture of my finished painting hanging in the collector's home. You'll learn interesting information about Da Vinci's original painting and process, and I'll share what I learned from the experience. If you're new to the channel, please go down below, subscribe, and leave a like as well. We really appreciate it. And please watch the video all the way through the end. You won't want to miss it. And let's get straight into this. So this is the goal. Here's the original Mona Lisa painting that's hanging in the Louvre. This is what we're trying to paint. Let me just give you a brief history of the Mona Lisa before we get started. Leonardo da Vinci's Mona Lisa painting in the Louvre Museum in Paris is arguably the most famous painting in the world. Painted by Leonardo in the early 1500s in oil on poplar wood, the original work is approximately 20 by 30 inches. Now, there's been a lot of speculation about who the woman in the painting was. It's thought to be a portrait of Lisa Gherardini, wife of Florentine cloth merchant called Francesco del Giocondo. Now, art historians know Leonardo had begun the Mona Lisa by 1503, but when he finished it is less certain. The Louvre originally dated the painting to 1503, 1506 in that area, but discoveries made in 2012 suggest it may have been as much as a decade later before it was finished. We just don't know. Now, the more I study and learn the history surrounding the work and the artist, the more fascinating this project actually became for me. The history of the Mona Lisa is shrouded in mystery. Among the aspects which remain unclear are the exact identity of the sitter who commissioned the portrait, how long Leonardo worked on the painting, how long he kept it, and how it came to be in the French royal collection. No less fascinating, in 1911, the Mona Lisa was the victim of the greatest art theft of the 20th century by a guy named Vincenzo Peruggia. So, with that said, let's get started on the underpainting. Okay, so here's the result of my first session. I applied a layer of thin, warm umber oil paint on my 20 by 30 inch gessoed maple panel. It's just time to lay out the figure on the panel. Since my work will be framed, I've allowed about 3/4 inches extra space around the image that will be covered by the frame. So on my white gessoed maple panel, I marked a few lines in pencil signifying where the major elements of the figure will be. I didn't want to spend a lot of time creating a detailed pencil drawing that would only get covered with paint, so I chose to paint a warm, simple underpainting in a fast dry, medium, thin umber oil paint. My intent here is to quickly cover the canvas with a thin, dry coat of paint, reflecting where the basic forms live, indicating as accurately as possible light and dark values. I used no white paint at all in this underpainting and used my fingers on occasion to work the paint in. Of primary importance at this stage is to get the figure foundation positioned properly, capture a little bit of the likeness, block in light and dark values with a thin coat of fast drying warm umber paint. So that's my first session. I let that dry and came back a day or two later after it was dry and began the second session. Okay, in this second painting session, as you can see, I finished the background umber underpainting, laying out the basic shapes and values. For the first time, I opened the titanium white and added another thin layer to the face, adjusting the position of the eyes, nose, and mouth. The face looks so cool here primarily because the rest of the painting is so warm. When the background gets cool in subsequent layers, the face will look much warmer, and I intend to warm the face quite a bit. Now it's time to take a look about take a look into Leonardo's process. So I'm going to discuss his process a little bit now. So Leonardo da Vinci, born 1452, died in 1519, one of the most intriguing personalities in the history of Western art. He trained in Florence as a painter and sculptor in the workshop of Andrea del Verrocchio in 1435 to 1488. Leonardo is also celebrated for his scientific contributions. Leonardo's curiosity and insatiable hunger for knowledge never left him. He was constantly observing, experimenting, and inventing, and drawing was for him a tool for recording his investigation of nature. Although completed works by Leonardo are few, he left a large body of drawings, almost 2,500, that record his ideas, most still gathered in the notebooks. He was principally active in Florence, 1472 to 1482, and 1500 to 1508, and Milan. He was 1482 to 1499, 1508 to 1513, but spent the last years of his life in Rome between 1513 and 1516, and France between 1516 to 1519, where he died. His genius as an artist and inventor continues to inspire artists and scientists alike centuries after his death. Leonardo's two most famous paintings are the Mona Lisa and the Last Supper. Now, Leonardo's painting technique, it's widely believed that Leonardo would first create a detailed underpainting or grisaille, same thing, in a neutral gray or brown, then apply his colors in transparent glazes on top. Some of the underpainting would show through the layers, subtly helping to create form. On his palette were muted, earthy browns, greens, and blues within a narrow tonal range. This helped give a sense of unity to the elements in his painting. Soft, gentle lighting was crucial to his paintings. You should make your portrait at the hour of the fall of the evening when it is cloudy or misty, for the light then is perfect, he said. Facial features were not strongly defined or outlined, but conveyed by soft blended variations in tone and color. The further from the focus point of the painting, the darker and more monochromatic the shadows become. These soft edges, I found, it makes it a lot more challenging to try to reproduce his painting. It's really hard to find an edge anywhere, so it makes more of a challenge. Leonardo's technique of softening colors and edges with dark glazes is also known as sfumato, from the Italian fumo, meaning smoke. It's as if all the edges have been obscured by a haze of transparent shadows or smoke. Creating colors by applying gazes gives a painting a depth you cannot get by applying a color mixed on a palette. Or in his own words, when a transparent color lies over another color differing from it, a compound color is composed, which differs from each of the simple colors. Leonardo explains color perspective in this way. Through variations in the air, we are made aware of the different distances of various buildings. Therefore, make the first building its own color. The next most distant make more blue, at another distant bluer yet, and that which is 5 times more distant make 5 times more blue. End quote. This principle is demonstrated in the background of the Mona Lisa. The ground and hills directly behind the subject are painted in warm tones of reddish browns and tans. As the landscape recedes, the mountains and waters become progressively more blue. So Leonardo also noted that air is more dense, closest to the earth, therefore the bases of hills will always appear lighter than the summit. He applies this theory to the hills behind the sitter's shoulders, which start out a tan color and become dark brown. His study of shadow can be related to his works in both compositional arrangement and sfumato techniques, which are both demonstrated in the Mona Lisa. One method of composition employed by Leonardo involved focus and blur. In the Mona Lisa, Leonardo uses shadow in the lowest areas of the picture plane at the edges and background of the landscape to blur detail and draw attention to the detailed focus area of the face. Leonardo also uses shadow as a primary element in creating sfumato or soft focus. I think I'll just use the term soft focus for now. I like it much better, which creates the illusion of volume by allowing light to emerge from the darkness of shadow. The sitter's body in Mona Lisa emerges from the shadows surrounding her from the mid-arm area down. Her hands are areas of light that form from the blurred shadows of her body, and her face emerges from the darkly shadowed areas of hair and veiling. So Leonardo's study of the shape of shadow contributed to the blurred shadow edges that are hallmark of that soft focus style. The Mona Lisa's body and face are enclosed within shadow, but no shadow edges ever become evident. So, Old Master technique basics. The idea is to create the illusion of reality, which means showing few, if any, brushstrokes. In practice, this means following the application of brushstrokes with blending into the existing paint on the surface. This can be done using another soft, dry brush or even with a finger or paper towel. I often witness the great realist Nelson Shanks, who taught me when I went to his school in Philadelphia how to blend his brushstrokes with Bounty paper towels. That was Nelson's favorite brand for this purpose, and sometimes with a finger. Another key characteristic of painting the style of the old realist masters, such as Da Vinci, is using warm and cool colors to build the illusion of a three-dimensional object on a flat surface. When a form turns, the color changes temperature. Generally, the color gets cooler as it turns away from the light source into shadow. For example, the light hits the top of Mona's nose, which creates a dark shadow under the tip of her nose above her top lip. Where the nose starts to turn down at the tip, I apply a red tint, then below a slightly darker green tint, then below a darker brown tint in the darkest part of the shadow. As the shadow gets closer to the top lip, it lightens and gets cooler with a grayish green tint. The form can actually go from warm to cool several times in the same form turn. If the values, lightness and darkness, are correct in the proper location, when the colors are slightly blended, the form looks very real and three-dimensional. So, to summarize, the key characteristics of Old Master Realism painting are 1. Good drawing, 2. Accurate placement of paint, 3. Accurate values, light and dark, 4. Warm and cool colors that create the illusion of form, and 5. Minimize the appearance of brushstrokes. Okay, one last thing I want to just touch on before we get back into this painting. I promise we're going to get back into this painting. But there was a special feature that Da Vinci used to lay out this painting and many of his other paintings that you probably heard of, called the golden ratio and phi. Okay, so this is how it works. The intense presence of the portrait, as well as the experience of Mona Lisa's eyes following the viewer throughout the room, is no accident. What makes a single number so interesting that ancient Greeks, Renaissance artists, a 17th century astronomer, and a 21st century novelist all would write about it. The golden ratio truly is unique in its mathematical properties and pervasive in its appearance throughout nature. It is recognized that Leonardo da Vinci used phi, known in the 1500s as the divine proportion, in a number of his paintings, including the Mona Lisa, where pi, or 3.14, is the ratio of the circumference of a circle to its diameter. Phi, or 1.618 is the golden ratio. That results when a line is divided in one very special and unique way. The Fibonacci sequence, also a plot element in the Da Vinci Code movie, provides yet another way to derive phi mathematically. The perfect rectangle is formed by creating rectangles within the corresponding dimensions of 1.618 from each descending Fibonacci number. The spiral comes from touching each side in the perfect rectangle. The golden spiral can best be seen in the shell of a nautilus. Many years ago, I acquired a golden mean caliper to help me lay out art in a manner that lives well within the golden ratio. It's very effective, yielding consistently pleasing and interesting results. Notice the key points that the golden spiral shown in the overlaid Mona Lisa image here comes in contact. It touches the bottom of the nose, the bottom of the chin, the top of the head, and at the intersection of the hands. The right eye touches the golden ratio line as well. All these key points in the figure corresponding to lines formed from the golden ratio mathematical formula yield an intensely compelling portrait. The viewer's eye comes in from the bottom left in the painting and runs naturally through the hands to the face to the right eye. It works beautifully. Now back to the painting. Okay, so this is my first paint layer using white paint and the mix on the hands. A rough outline was previously scrubbed in with burnt umber only. In this pass, I'm focused on carefully positioning the hands and introducing color. I work with yellow ochre, terra rosa, ultramarine blue, and white, liberally applying paint with very little medium. The hands are far from completed, but I now have a good foundation to build. It is difficult to see my work in these zoomed out images, so as I get farther along, I will show you better close-ups. So this is the fourth session, and we've made some major progress here. I worked a couple more hours on the hands, then the background, hair, face, chest, and clothing, moving around the entire panel. It's so nice to finally see the cool colors in the background and the work starting to come together. You can see the warm underpainting still peeking through in the sky. Now, my palette consists of Vasari oil paint tubes in ultramarine blue, yellow ochre, burnt umber, terra rosa, and titanium white. I'm working with thin layers of almost pure paint with little medium. I have dozens of paint colors, but it's best to use restraint, keeping the colors to a minimum, which enhances color unity. For medium, I'm using Galcod gel in a tube previously made by Daniel Smith, now available through Gamblin. Gamblin's had it out for a long time. I use this medium primarily to speed up drying time and add a little fluidity when needed. My brushes are made by Rosemary Brushes in England. I prefer the Master's Choice long flats made from mongoose and badger hair. The softness of these brushes offers the ability to lay down thick paint on top of an already thick stroke without digging into the lower stroke the way the stiffer hog bristle would. They're also great for softening edges and for detail work. I use sizes 2 to 12. For detail work, I use the round golden synthetic 301 sizes 1 to 4. For more detailed info on the use of selection of brushes, there is a Schultz article. It's a good resource that I may be able to put a link into the description. Color value and selection for fear of damaging the 500-year-old paint, the Mona Lisa hangs in the Louvre unclean and most likely has lost some of its original color and brightness. Upon careful examination under light, many more details are revealed. A quick Google search of the Mona Lisa yields a variety of different color temperatures, values, and contrasts. For example, I see very warm images of the face as well as some very cool ones. I also see faces that are dark and with much shading, and some that are light with little shading. I see images where the hair is lighter red, brown, and others where the hair is very dark, almost black. So I have a very high quality digital image of the original, but even that is subject to interpretation based on the color and intensity of the light on the image. So soon I'll be arriving at the stage of my project where choices regarding color and value will need to be made. It is my desire to create a historically accurate representation of the original work, and it makes perfect sense to increase light values and color saturations a little bit. A very fascinating story about the Mona Lisa, which I mentioned previously, why the Mona Lisa is the most famous painting in the world, was the Great Theft. What really catapulted the small portrait into international stardom was a daring burglary over 100 years ago. Burglary, that is, 100 years ago, when Italian handyman Vincenzo Perugia stole the Mona Lisa from the Louvre in 1911. Her absence would be the very thing that made her the most recognizable painting on the planet, on the earth, I should say. Suddenly, images of the artwork were splashed across international newspapers as a 2-year police hunt hit dead end after dead end. It wasn't until December 19 that Perugia was finally caught and the Mona Lisa recovered, becoming the most well-known painting in the world. If a different one of Leonardo's works had been stolen, then that would have been the most famous work in the world, not the Mona Lisa, said Noah Charney, professor of art history and author of a book called The Thefts of the Mona Lisa. Quote, there was nothing that really distinguished it per se, he says, other than it was a very good work by a famous artist. That's until it was stolen, he added. The theft is what really skyrocketed its appeal and made it a household name. So how did Perugia pull off one of the greatest art heists of all time? The handyman had been hired by the Louvre to make protective glass cases for some of its famous works, including the Mona Lisa. Well, a perfect way to steal the Mona Lisa. They hire you to make glass cases for the Mona Lisa. So after hiding in a closet overnight, this guy simply removed the painting, hid it under his smock, and was about to waltz out of the building when he discovered the door was locked. Desperate, Perugia removed the doorknob, but still it wouldn't open until a helpful plumber passing by opened the door with his key. It was about 24 hours before anyone ever noticed the Mona Lisa was missing, with artworks often removed to be photographed or cleaned was common. Quote, the Louvre had over 400 rooms, but only 200 guards, and even fewer on duty overnight, said Charney, founder of the Association for Research into Crimes, ARCA, Research into Crimes Against Art. There were basically no alarms in play. It was under secure, he says, but to be fair, most museums were at that time. Well, that's very consoling. The French press had a field day, seeing it as an opportunity to make fun at the seemingly inept government which ran the Louvre. This was an era where newspapers were really taking off, and pretty soon the theft and the image of the Mona Lisa was splashed across the world. 60 detectives seek stolen Mona Lisa. French public indignant, was the reported New York Times. For the first time, there were queues outside the Louvre just to see the empty space where the painting had hung. The theft launched it into becoming a household name for people who had never been to Europe and had no interest in art, said Charney, adding, and it's really just continued from there. Over the next 2 years, the bungling police investigation dragged on, with Pablo Picasso a suspect at one point. The force even interviewed Perugia twice before concluding he couldn't possibly be the man behind the brazen burglary. The head of the Paris police retired in shame, and even 2 years later, an art dealer in Florence received a letter from a man saying he had the Mona Lisa. It was signed Leonardo. The man, of course, was Perugia. So after setting up a meeting with the dealer and the director of the Uffizi Gallery in Florence, Perugia turned up with the painting, which had spent years hidden in a trunk in his apartment. Perugia, then 32 years old, claimed to have stolen the artwork to return it to the native Italy. He was arrested and eventually sentenced to 7 months in jail. Only 7 months. Can you believe that? He seemed to have genuinely been convinced he would be heralded as a national hero and genuinely dismayed to discover he wasn't, said Charney, adding, he was maybe a few pickles short of a sandwich, but not a lunatic. For most of us, the Mona Lisa will only ever be seen from behind bulletproof glass, a thumbnail in the distance, smiling, her knowing smile behind jostling tourists with camera phones held aloft. But for over 2 years, Perugia had the famous woman all to himself. Did he fall in love with her? I think so, said Charney. There are a number of thieves who have stolen art and have suffered a sort of reverse Stockholm syndrome where the hostage taker falls in love with the hostage. In this case, the hostage was a work of art. So back to the painting. I'm on the 5th and 6th painting session here. I was thinking baby steps. Sometimes a session just seems to yield very little, but that's okay. We just keep moving forward. I focus on the sleeve area and below the sleeve, even tweak the hands a bit more. And it's difficult to see much progress in these last few sessions. But again, I will zoom in much tighter very soon. But in these initial layout stages, they do show dramatic changes in each session as we progress into the details. The changes are less evident in each session though, but it is imperative to have the foundation laid properly or the subsequent detail layers will be fruitless. I'm careful to double check the basic position of each element before each layer is added. Every brushstroke I make now is still a foundation for the final brushstrokes to follow in the final layers. So I continue to use thin paint as a build form. Everything except the foundation is subject to change in a state of flux as I proceed. So we're looking now at the 5th and 6th sessions. This is where I was in the painting and getting ready to move quickly into the 7th session. Okay, it's coming to life. We're on the 7th session now. I had Gregorian chant music setting the mood in the background, sipping my freshly ground, full-bodied coffee, adrenaline pumping, filled with excitement about what's to come. I asked myself, what would Leonardo do? Laying out my fresh paints for this session, I carefully study the original Mona Lisa image and then study my painting. How do I make my painting come to life? I feel like I'm trying to channel Leonardo right now. I start with an obvious needed correction on the right pupil. As I work and refine, the differences become less obvious. I squint down, glance at the original Mona Lisa image, then glance at my painting, repeating the process several times, stepping back, moving forward, squinting down again, making several brush strokes, stepping back, squinting down again. The last stroke seems so cool. So I warm the paint on my palette and apply another stroke on top of the previous stroke. That's better. I'm always tweaking the foundation where needed as I'm adding details. If you closely compare this session image with the last session image, you'll notice that the right pupil was a bit too far to the right and the neck was a bit too long. After making those corrections, I continued to touch up the eyes, nose and mouth, refine the hair where it meets the chest and the background area surrounding her hair. I walk about 10 feet back from my painting, squinting down a bit, glancing back and forth between the original and my work, repeating the process several times and laying a few more brushstrokes. Yeah, it's finally starting to come to life. Okay, on this 8th session, I refined the face, I warmed it, I'm adding reflected light under the chin. Now that I have all the elements positioned correctly, the values relating to each other properly, and have a good likeness, I'm ready to start working on the finishing layers. I've been reluctant to go as dark as the original on the background in the sky and surrounding the face, as well as the shading on the face. However, after pondering this matter, I have decided to go darker as the original appears to be, because I believe it will look more authentic if I do so. Okay, on this 9th painting session, just refining more and refining more. I glazed the lower background with Gamblin transparent red and darkened the upper background with a green tint. More shading was added to the face. The sky was darkened towards the top and lightened near the horizon using some warm and cool colors. Okay, now we're on the 10th session. In order to compare values more closely, I compared a desaturated black and white picture of the original to a desaturated black and white picture of my painting, comparing black and white images of both the original and my painting. This was very instrumental in determining where I still needed work. I could really see the values much more accurately with the desaturated versions. I noticed that the face still needed some more shading. The background needed some more darker values on the face. The background needs to be darker. The hands needed more darker values on the hands. Also noticed that the color of the hands was a little too yellow in comparison to the face. So these items all became a part of my to-do list, and then I began chipping away at them as best I could, one at a time. And we're getting near the end of the painting. Here we're moving into the 11th session now. Okay, here we are in the 11th session. We're making great strides, determined more than ever to keep moving forward and get better and better. I once again set aside a large block of time, 3 p.m. until 11:30 p.m. With a large pot of my favorite full-bodied coffee ready to go, I entered my studio with great energy and focus. With my Gregorian chant music playing softly in the background, I laid out plenty of fresh paint and a new roll of paper towels. You should see the mess I can make when I get going. With my to-do list in the back of my mind, glancing back and forth between my painting on the easel and the original image on my computer monitor, I walked back about 10 feet and squinted down. Initially, I was tentative to make a stroke. When near completion, sometimes it's 1 step forward and 2 steps back. Hard work doesn't always yield improved results. So I try to start on the most glaring issue, asking God to guide my hands. I brushed some medium on the face and immediately noticed an edge that needed softening. Boom, with adrenaline pumping, I was off to the races. First tweaking the left eye, then to shading on the cheek, the chin, the neck, altering the values, then worked on how the hair falls on the chest, then creating form of the hair on the chest. Moving back again, squinting down, moving close, moving back. It seemed like a couple of hours had passed. I was exhausted. I looked at the clock. It was 11 p.m. I had been working standing up the entire time for about 8 hours. No wonder I was so tired. I wasn't 25 anymore when I painted this painting. But gosh, I still hadn't done anything to darken the background as I intended. Knowing that I didn't have the time or energy to complete the sky background, I still decided that I would lay a foundation. I laid out some gorgeous fresh ultramarine blue paint began quickly creating various mixtures of blue, white, umbers, and ochres. These are all colors that I noticed in the original. I worked on the sky for another 30 minutes, and although not complete, I stopped working, started cleaning up. My energy was gone. So the next morning, I assessed the 8+ hours work I did the previous day. I take a picture of the painting, post it on my blog, and I start writing about my experience. The end is near. I see the sky still needs work, but I'm about ready to sign it, varnish it, and kiss it goodbye. Send my Mona Lisa to the new home that my collector has adequately prepared for it. So my brushes are still calling me though. My wife suggested that I take the night off and play some guitar. I had every intention of doing so, but my brushes started calling me. It's been several days now since I painted, and I wanted to do some work on the sky, and I just couldn't resist. So another large cup of full-bodied coffee in my left hand and a fistful of chocolate in my right. I descended into my man cave. My choice of mood music tonight is yet again Gregorian chant. I lay out a few gorgeous buttery oil paints on my oversized palette, put a little Vaseline on my hands so the paint wipes off easily, stand back and start comparing my work with Leonardo's, squinting down, looking. My best intentions are to start with the sky, but Mona's eyes are now calling me. I look closely at the edges, the interplay of warm and cool colors creating form. I know I can do better. I focus my attention only on the eyes, and I ask myself, how does Leonardo's eyes of the Mona Lisa differ? Discovering ways to improve, I begin trying to capture the subtle nuances that make the famous Mona Lisa eyes. Helpful words come to me that I first heard from the late, great classical realist painter Nelson Shanks, who I studied from in Philadelphia. When I studied figure and portrait painting years ago at Studio Incaminati in Philadelphia, Nelson used to say, to create form, paint planes with contrasting warm and cool colors, using the appropriate values. I'm very thankful that Nelson taught me the importance of first seeing the subtle nuances of form before trying to express them in paint. A flurry of concentrated effort yields improvement, so I move to the back of the room, close my eyes, then open them once again slowly. Yes, that's it. Okay, on to the sky. Wait a second. Okay, we're on the 12th session now. Here we go. Getting very near the end. Okay, not so fast. Neck shadow. I'm looking at the neck shadow. A little longer, a bit softer. The chest, more roundness. Working in the subtle shadows, then working in some warm light paint on the top. Yes, now it's on to the sky. Okay, I see light warm ochres and cool ultramarine blues in the original. Starting with the edges of the mountains in the distance, moving down, adding darks, then moving up in the light, mixing warm and cool colors, keeping the paint on the brush dry and minimal. I try and recreate the technique I see in the original. Using my badger hair long flat brushes of many sizes, I begin lightly laying paint in the sky. Noticing a few brush strokes visible in the original, I experiment with applying paint with a paper towel and then massage it in with a large dry brush. Ooh, very nice. The ochre and blue paint mixed together on the panel as I apply it to create green in various areas. Much better. I'm happy with my work on the eyes, sky, and chest. It's been several hours since I started this session. My energy begins to subside. Okay, that's a wrap. I take a photo of my work on the easel. under very cool artificial light in my studio. I loaded on my website and began writing about the experience. In the many photos that I've taken during the process of painting this project, you'll notice quite a bit of variation in temperature. Sometimes the pictures of my painting look warm, sometimes cool, sometimes dark, other times light. I apologize for that. That's just due to inconsistent camera settings and lighting. It is hard to get that consistent over a long period of time and a lot of different sessions. I'm so close to being finished with my painting, exhausted and going to bed, and we're going to pick this up. We've got one more session to finish this out. So hang with me, because a new dawn brings a new list of development ideas for the work. Is it time to end this journey and begin a new one? Well, we're going on to the finish. Ready or not, here we go. Okay, so here we are. It's been a long ride, and I really appreciate all those of you who've stuck with me. Still got a little bit more to go, not much. We're getting very, very close right now. So we are in the finish, the final stage. I will say that there were several more sessions after session 12 that I didn't post, just tweaking, very slight tweaks, and couldn't really see them on the photographs that I was taking. But it has been trying to paint the Mona Lisa has been an amazing, humbling experience, and I appreciate the opportunity that was given to me by my client and now good friend for commissioning the painting. Not only has this been a tremendous learning experience and improved my artist skills considerably, it has brought me back in touch with myself. I came face to face with my obsession for the unobtainable perfection. I know in my humanity, perfection does not exist, and longing for it can be extremely torturous sometimes. So I've arrived at the conclusion that striving perfection is a great thing if I'm enjoying the process, which I usually do. However, the challenge lies in knowing when it's time to turn it off and accept where it is, where I am, let it go and move on. Most artists will agree that it's easier said than done. A little OCD can kick in and spoil parts of the journey. So a common question that arises for most artists at some point in their journey is, how do you know when a painting is finished? In other words, how do you know when it's time to let go, accept, and move on? So I'm developing a short list of my own ideas on this topic below. If any of you have any other ideas that you'd like to share, I'd appreciate it if you leave them in the comments. Any kind of questions, or please leave in the comments. I'll be sure to respond. And so my top reasons to stop painting when the painting is finished, when it's time to let it go. Okay, here it is. After another long painting session, when my wife can't tell any difference, okay, after I paint a long session and the next day, I say, "What do you think, honey?" And she goes, "What did you do? I can't tell." Then I know it's getting close to being finished. When it stops being fun anymore, you got to kind of enjoy the process. You got to enjoy the art. It comes out in the paint. If you get upset and you're angry, it'll come out in the paint. You'll be able to see it in the paint. People will feel the vibes. You start getting frustrated, or even worse if you get angry at the painting, right? So, and then the painting will start losing that fresh look. So, in closing, my closing thoughts, I have a new respect for Mr. Da Vinci. After spending countless hours over the course of the last few months studying Da Vinci's Mona Lisa and attempting to recreate his work, I've gained a new respect and admiration for this work and the man who created it. Even though I didn't have the original next to me, that would be so much easier, I would think, than trying to work from photographs of the original. But who's going to be able to have the original Mona Lisa to work from, right? Nobody. So we do the best we can do. So upon close inspection of his work, it immediately becomes apparent that to create the many complex form transitions in a painting, it would require multiple accurate layers of paint, one on top of the other. Da Vinci is thought to have worked on the painting off and on for a period of 2 to 10 years, depending on which historian you talk to. So this fact makes me feel a little better, because perhaps then I can lower my expectations of my own work, because I only had a couple months to work on it, not 2 to 10 years. So truth be told, I would not want to compete with Leonardo even if I had 100 years of work on it. He is that good. It is much more difficult than it looks. His work truly is a masterpiece and is deserving of the greatest respect. Cracks on the painting surface on the original Mona Lisa surface is covered with small cracks due to the 500-year age of the painting, the expanding and contracting of the poplar wood surface that it was painted on, and the multiple thin layers, one on top of another, that he used. So one of the drawbacks of painting form with high realism is that it requires multiple layers of thin paint, and painting in this style has the potential to check or crack in the future. So the challenges of creating a master painting reproduction, it has been a rare occasion in my career that I created a painting using an existing painting by another artist as a reference for my work. Many unique challenges arise. Perhaps at the top of the list is not having the original reference painting in my studio as I work, as I mentioned. This introduces many variables which can be confusing at times. There's a huge difference in art appearance displayed among various computer screens. Settings such as brightness, color, balance, contrast are all over the map and create huge discrepancies in appearance. The light in which a painting is viewed plays a huge part in the appearance of the work. On many occasions, I have viewed a painting in progress in a particular light. Could have been window, fluorescent, or even warmer incandescent. The brightness and angle of the light has effect as well. Upon seeing the work, I made some assumptions. The next time I viewed the work, the light on the painting was different, and my previous assumptions seemed to be incorrect. It'll drive you crazy. A preconceived notion by the public about what our work is supposed to look like is a challenge artists don't usually face when creating our own work. It removes much of the creative aspect and sets us on the impossible task of creating a complex handmade work of art identical to another complex handmade work of art. I can see how most artists would repel at that thought. When I ponder this topic in a different light, much as I do my paintings, I come to a more appealing conclusion. Of course, it might not be expected that the recreation is identical, the recreation is identical to the original. The client must be happy with a similar painting and appreciate our own individuality as artists as well. If this understanding exists as an artist, I can certainly enjoy the journey of creating art that will make someone very happy. So it can be a rewarding experience for both parties. Demand for master painting reproduction, well, in museums throughout the world, people stand in line every day to view famous paintings on display by master artists of the past. These paintings are valued at millions of dollars to hundreds of millions. Some are valued highly for the wrong reasons, such as wealthy collectors' corrupt influence over the museum. However, many are truly genius works of art, incredible compositions, brilliant brushwork. So it makes sense that an art enthusiast would have a strong desire to have a famous original museum master painting hanging on the wall in their own home. I can also understand why a printed copy of the painting would not be appealing. So master painting reproduction as an investment is a topic, is something to consider. If a talented artist can hand paint a similar painting for thousands instead of millions of dollars, which would substantially capture the qualities of the original, this is the next best thing to owning the original. It is a good investment as well because there will be always a high demand for master painting similar to a famous multi-million-dollar master painting in a museum. So, in wrapping things up, the Mona Lisa, we painted it the exact same size as the original in the Louvre. We framed it, lit it, hanging on the client's wall, and the client is very happy, very happy. And I can tell you that when I flew out to California to view the painting on my client's wall and sitting in a chair and gazing at that next to another painting that I had painted that he had purchased previously, it was very, very, I just felt great. Really just enjoyed so much seeing on the wall. And here's the final picture of the painting hanging on the wall of my client's home. And I just want to thank you again so much for staying with me and bearing with my long-winded stories and my description of my journey. I hope you got something out of it, and you will subscribe to the channel. We can create a little community because I intend to doing a lot of live painting demos where I'm actually painting and communicating with a community of individuals. So thank you so much again, and I'll see you next time.